you very much for everyone joining late evening at 7. And I know most of you go long night with your studies, research, and project work and everything. So appreciate you for joining. And thank you, Arjun and Technovation team and IIT Mumbai for inviting me for this talk. And as much as I'm talking here, I'm also willing to learn a lot from all of you. So that's the way I get inspired also. And before I start, one request I have is, if possible, if you all can turn your camera on, that would be good, because otherwise I will just see gray screens and I'll be talking, looking at just the screen, if possible. So that's my simple request. So like Arjun said, I work in Rakuten, India. I'm heading the product and technology team for e-commerce side of business for Rakuten. Rakuten is a global company headquartered in Japan, and there are 70 businesses across. And I call it as a mini startups. All these companies are mini startups, and everyday idea, is running all over the place for people to look at things and deliver, products and technology solutions that impact customers' life. So with that, I'm going to start talking about the power of an idea today, and hope this is helpful for you. I'm just sharing my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, great. So we'll get into the topic quickly. And so just a disclaimer, these are my personal views. So I just want to share what I have learned all through my experience. And that is what I'm sharing with you all. I want you to listen. Hold on one second. I'm not sure if I share this with the sound intact. Hold on one second, share the sound. Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. You're able to see it now?
Yes, sir.
Arjun, yes.
Yeah.
Let me know if you're able to hear the video.
Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started. If I had to know everything about connecting people before I got started, I never would have built Facebook. Movies and pop culture just get this all wrong. The idea of a single eureka moment is a dangerous lie. It makes us feel inadequate because we feel like we haven't had ours yet. And it prevents people with seeds of good ideas from ever getting started in the first place.
Thank you. I thought I'll start the session with Mark Zuckerberg talking about ideas. The best thing is to get started. There's never going to be a perfect idea that comes to your mind. The better thing is to get started, right? With that, I'll start. I want to cover 3 things today. One, the spark, where it all got started, right? That's something which I want to cover. Next, the need. Why do we do it? Why do we do ideas? What is the reason behind this? I want to share my perspective on that. Third, the process. How do we go about it, right? So these are the 3 things I want to cover today as a takeaway for you all. Now, first, where it all got started, I'm going to give some examples of where these ideas originated and what are you seeing the manifestation of a product or company today. Now, what if you could request a ride from your phone? This is one of the thought that came to someone, and what started out of that is a company, Uber. 2 housemates were struggling to pay the rent and came up with the inventive idea to make some extra money. And what started after that is Airbnb. Similarly, someone went for a backpacking trip in South Africa and they saw people buying rugby tickets online. And what got started was Book My Show. And this is something which is interesting. And obviously, people have a different story to say for this, but then this is a person who is a mathematical expert, and he went and studied mathematics. And he thought how to solve the VHS data problem, how you can fit it in a station wagon, and how much VHS you can fit in. And that got him to trigger into the DVD revolution and what we call as the Netflix revolution now. And finally, after reading a report about the future of internet that projected annual web commerce will go 23,000, 23 and 2,300 person, And this is how Amazon got started, basically. So now you saw all these have a common pattern, right? Where it all gets started is that question, is that need of looking at essentially what is the problem that you have in hand? How do you go about creating something in order to fix that? Now once we saw some of these examples, let's go into the need. What is there to need? And you all would know about this proverb called, necessity is the mother of invention. Obviously, something which Plato said in long time back, and that has been observed, and everyone is quoting that, right? But the innate need is essentially what is our need drives us to create better solutions. It is all about the need. Once you understand the need, then automatically the ideas, the solutions, everything comes into play. Now, what is a good example when you look at it? I'm going to share something which is phenomenal in the current times. If you look at this picture, the traditional vaccine development timeline is at the top. And if you look at it from the design exploratory process, the process development, once the idea is submitted, then the phases starts, phase 1, 2, 3, and then regulatory approval. Everything goes through, for a vaccine to come to you or to anyone who needs that, it takes 15 years. But what has happened today in the COVID world is how it has shrunk into 10 to 12 months, of cycle, or 15 months of cycle, where this entire process is, compressed essentially. Now, why does that happen? If you ask, it is the need. Today, we cannot wait for a vaccine for 15 years. So obviously the scientists, the medicine experts, the doctors, everyone got together and they said, how do I compress this? How do I, create something which is immediate need for the human, kind? So that is what the need drives us to create better solutions. This is something which I wanted to share. Second, I want to talk about, when you look at the need, what is there? The problem solving is the core, because often we look at essentially, things as when we go through our experience, in any of our interactions in the outer world, why does idea come? Is because we face some problem, and then we want to solve that problem, and that has been from the origin of human mankind. You can look at it. That is how it starts, and that's where I see this is as a very good picture where you identify the problem, you define, and then you explore, and you define multiple actions, and then you look back and iterate to see what works best, and you keep improving. And so, for an idea to happen, a problem solving becomes a core aspect of that. Third, observation and experience teaches us essentially, and this is a very, very important thing that often when we generate idea, we think that idea is going to be something disconnected from what is happening at the ground reality. That's not true. It is much more connected to what is happening in the realistic world. But the important thing is, as a fellow entrepreneur or someone who wants to create something, you really need to observe and understand and experience what it goes through in whoever is going through that, and based on that, develop an idea. I'm going to play a quick video about this. And this is Tom Kelly, is one of the founding partner of IDEO, and he talks about how the observation helped them to develop a better product.
About 10 years ago, we got approached by one of the largest oral healthcare companies in America, a company you've probably heard of called Oral-B, and they said, look, we'd like a new kids' toothbrush because ours is starting to get commoditized. It looks like a lot of kids' toothbrushes out there, and you can't have that. We want to be special, right? So we say, okay, we'll do this. We want to go out in the field and do some field research. And they're kind of not sure about that. Like, it's not rocket science. We're talking about kids brushing their teeth. How hard could that be, right? They would really like us to stop fooling around and start designing, right? But we want to go through this process, this observation process, because we think almost always you can spot opportunities. And so we go out, and we're on like the first day of observations, and we make a small discovery. The small discovery we make is that every kid's toothbrush in the history of the world has had the same implicit assumption. It's a logical assumption, it just isn't exactly right, which is the assumption always was parents have big hands, Kids have small hands, and so when you want to make the kids' version, make it like the parents' brush, only smaller and skinnier. Perfectly logical until you go out in the field, until you actually watch humans, little tiny humans, brushing their teeth. And what you notice right away, you get a 5-year-old boy brushing his teeth, he's not holding his toothbrush in his fingertips the way mom and dad do, he's fisting it. He's holding it like this because he doesn't have the dexterity. He doesn't have the fine motor controls that his parents have, and so he's got to hold it like this. In fact, the other thing he does is he holds the brush too far up very frequently, and so he's punching himself in the face as he's trying to brush his teeth, and we solved that problem too. But the main thing was, came back in the field and said, uh-oh, kids don't need little skinny toothbrushes. Kids need big fat toothbrushes, right? Let's make them big fat squishy toothbrushes. And you may have noticed, now every toothbrush company in the world makes these, but our client reports that after we made that little tiny discovery out in the field, sitting in a bathroom watching a 5-year-old boy brush his teeth, they had the best-selling kids' toothbrush in the world for 18 months. So when you think about power, when you think about, credibility, if you could go out in the field and do that observation and come up with that finding, and your company, your organization was the best in its field for 18 months afterwards, would that be worth it? I think that would be worth it. And so that's this message about think like a traveler, be an anthropologist, use your powers of observation, have that part of your brain turned up as high as you can all along.
Yeah, so that's a very good way to look at how do you generate ideas. It's observing. There are so many things happening outside our, when you look at our world, and those are moments where we can get ideas in order to build some product to improve customers or anyone's life. Next, I want to talk about think about larger the canvas, greater the impact, essentially. So your idea, it has to impact larger people, much larger context. So think about Khan Academy, how Khan Academy started. It's primarily started with Sal Khan teaching his nephew. Both of them are a different part of the country, and they started. But then slowly he realized the power of internet and how education can transform. Now look at it. It is available to everyone, anyone in the world. It's free, of course, and it is impacting so many people's life to learn so many things. So larger the canvas, greater the impact. So that's how the idea is. Even if it's small, the impact is going to be much more when you improve the canvas of where it is played. Finally, I just want to share this also. Don't just imitate, but get inspired, contextualize, and add value and innovate. Because all we know, basically, I'm just taking one example in Indian startup ecosystem. Everybody thinks, hey, Amazon and Flipkart just copied Amazon. I worked at Flipkart, so I'm sharing this with you all. But that's not true. Yes, the original idea was what Amazon was doing, but if you look at it, how Flipkart innovated and they went ahead and being dominant in the Indian market is because of the innovation that they did. They understand, contextualize for Indian market. They said, okay, you know what? Credit card doesn't work here. We need to offer something new. That's how the cash on delivery started. And that's much popular. Then Amazon tagged onto it. And Flipkart went and started its own supply chain company. Until that point, Amazon never had its own supply chain arm. They used to partner with FedEx or UPS and US. But when they come to India, they said, this is not going to work. We need to control the entire supply chain. And they replicated what Flipkart was doing. So it's not just about imitation. Even if you look at any other products in the market, any other product in the companies that are offering, you just don't imitate them. You just have to look at it. What is that is value that I can add? What is that I can contextualize to my customers? And how can I innovate around that and then increase the value of that, right? Now, I'm getting into the process, basically. See what we saw about, what it all got started, how are some of these ideas get started, great companies born out. And then we looked at basically what is the need for these, and how does need arise? And we saw about how these need arise in terms of, observing, problem solving, and improving the canvas and making impact on all those things. Now, let's look at essentially what are some of the ways the ideation process can work. Essentially, I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 of these ideas where it will help you in order to generate ideas. One thing is very, simple. All of you know is, brainstorming. This is a method to generate ideas and share in the, sharing the knowledge within the group and to solve problem essentially. Now, how do you do it essentially? If you look at it in terms of, how, IDEO, one of the company that I, really follow on the design principles and, design thinking is, rules of brainstorming. So you have a bunch of people in a group and you share an idea and you have to really go at it. You have to be non-judgmental about it. You have to come up with wild ideas. You have to stay focused on the topic and start conversation at time. And as much as possible, be visual. And I'm going to talk about another technique which will help you to be visual also. So this is one of the way to create ideas and then brainstorm about ideas in order to fine tune your ideas. Next, again, all of you might have known about this technique. It's called mind mapping, which is visually you organize information. You start with a central theme and you take related ideas associated with that theme and then go around defining those essentially. So again, like I said, the step process, you start with the central core theme of the idea that you have in mind, and you start elaborating that and you make associations, and then you structure this in terms of, how many ever branches that needs to lead onto. This kind of, improves your vision of basically what is that, core theme. And then from where it is association goes and what areas you need to look at. This is another important technique in the ideation process that helps you to, fine tune your ideas and go after the idea that you want to attract. And this is another important technique called SCAMPER. And primarily what this does is essentially it is a lateral thinking technique which challenges the status quo, explores new possibilities. And this is primarily used in terms of, products, that you already have. A company already has a product, and the SCAMPER is an acronym for you substitute, or you replace a thing and come up with a new thing, or you combine things, or you adapt things, in order to market, you reshape things. Or in fact, you modify things, you change the color, motion, form, size, and get you a new product. Or put the product to another use, or you eliminate the, some component of that essentially. And then finally, you reverse essentially, right? So there are multiple examples here, if you look at it, in McDonald's world, often in fast food world, you always, get the product and then you go pay. What McDonald's did is the reverse. They asked customers to pay first, and then they went ahead and, bought it. Similarly, you can look at, substitution adoption concept of, how mobile phone has evolved. All of you would remember, or probably you may not, is, we used to have phone which called BlackBerry with a keyboard in it, essentially. But then, it got substituted with touchscreen when Apple invented saying that you don't need that. You can be in the phone in a software form, right? So these are some examples of how do you look at this, applying this technique. You take a look at existing problem or existing product and apply this technique to see how do I generate ideas in order to get better product out of this, better idea on those. Another one important thing is, design thinking. This is very much applied in many of the product companies, how they come. This is a very, very critical aspect where you look at human-centered approach innovation. So you look at people need, you look at people possible, need, and then look at what are the possible technologies that you can apply in order to bring business, success. And, it starts with empathize, which is basically you generate empathy towards who is your users, who's your audience, who's going to use this. And then define, what are the steps in order to get to the scope of what you need. And then get into ideate of what are the various ideation opportunities that you can get into that. Then you quickly build a prototype. And this is where, some of you have heard about agile thinking and lean startup practices, where you quickly, prototype, you test it out in certain, market and get the feedback from the customers and then pivot. And then you go through the cycle again, right? This is one of the very, important technique that is applied for you to generate ideas and take your ideas into a, product which can, test out in the market and then keep iterating out of that. And finally, I want to share another technique which is called jobs to be done, or called J2BD, which is being the product and solution in terms of the jobs that the customer are trying to get done. We often don't think like that. We often think like, okay, customer is getting this product, I'm going to build a product that customer buys. But then you have to really look at it. Why is the customer buying this product? And that mindset is very, very important to go into the emotional aspect of why this customer, what needs are there for the customer to buy this product, and then shape it in a much better idea in order to get to the market. I'm going to play a quick video. Clayton Christensen is one of the Harvard Business School professor. Unfortunately, he's no longer alive. But he is the one who kind of looked into it, and they've done so much work on the field with various companies in order to implement this framework and get this product out to the market.
Hi, my name's Clay Christensen. I'm a professor at the Harvard Business School. I brought with me a set of puzzles, all related to innovation. We decided that the way we teach marketing is at the core of what makes motivation difficult to achieve. The most helpful way we've thought of it so far is that we actually hire products to do things for us. And understanding what job we have to do in our lives for which we would hire a product is really the key to cracking this problem of motivating customers to buy what we're offering. So I wanted just to tell you a story about a project we did for one of the big fast food restaurants. They were trying to goose up the sales of their milkshakes. They had just studied this problem up the gazoo. They brought in customers who fit the profile of the quintessential milkshake consumer. And they'd give them samples and ask, could you tell us how we can improve our milkshakes so you'd buy more of them? Do you want it chocolatey or cheaper, chunky or chewier? They get very clear feedback. They would then improve the milkshake on those dimensions, and it had no impact on sales or profits whatsoever. So one of our colleagues went in with a different question on his mind, and that was, I wonder what job arises in people's lives that cause them to come to this restaurant to hire a milkshake. So we stood in a restaurant for 18 hours one day and just took very careful data. What time did they buy these milkshakes? What were they wearing? Were they alone? Did they buy other food with it? Did they eat it in the restaurant or drive off with it? It turned out that nearly half of the milkshakes were sold before 8 o'clock in the morning. The people who bought them were always alone. It was the only thing they bought, and they all got in the car and drove off with it. So to figure out what job they were trying to hire it to do, we came back the next day and stood outside the restaurant so we could confront these folks as they left, milkshake in hand. And in language that they could understand, we essentially asked, excuse me, please, but I got to sort this puzzle out. What job were you trying to do for yourself that caused you to come here and hire that milkshake? And they'd struggle to answer, so we'd then help them by asking other questions like, well, think about the last time you were in the same situation, needing to get the same job done, but you didn't come here to hire a milkshake. What did you hire? And then as we put all of their answers together, it became clear that they all had the same job to do in the morning, and that is they had a long and boring drive to work. And they just needed something to do while they drove to keep the commute interesting. One hand had to be on the wheel, but somebody had given them another hand and there wasn't anything in it. And they just needed something to do while they drove. They weren't hungry yet, but they knew they'd be hungry by 10 o'clock. So they also wanted something that would just pull down there and stay for their morning. Good question. What do I hire when I do this job? You know, I've never framed the question that way before, but last Friday I hired a banana to do the job. Take my word for it, never hire bananas. They're gone in 3 minutes, you're hungry by 7:30. If you promise not to tell my wife, I probably hire donuts twice a week, but they don't do it well either. They're gone fast, they crumb all over my clothes, they get my fingers gooey. Sometimes I hire bagels, but as you know, they're so dry and tasteless. Then I have to steer the car with my knees while I'm putting jam on them, and then if the phone rings, we got a crisis. I remember I hired a Snickers bar once, but I felt so guilty I've never hired Snickers again. Let me tell you, when I come here and hire this milkshake, it is so viscous that it easily takes me 20 minutes to suck it up that thin little straw. Who cares what the ingredients are? I don't. All I know is I'm full all morning and it fits right here in my cup holder. Well, it turns out that the milkshake does the job better than any of the competitors, which in the customer's minds are not Burger King milkshakes, but it's bananas, donuts, bagels, Snickers bars, coffee, and so on. But I hope you can see how, if you understand the job, how to improve the product becomes just obvious.
Okay. I think you would have got the message, right? So it is about understanding the job. What is the customer is hiring your product for? Once you understand that, it is better, for us to look at what help we can do in order to get our product out there. And the ideas, that generate out of it is going to attract towards that essentially. Now, I want to close with one of this, video, and this is one of my favorite. Because we all think that ideas, is something which is, great. And once I get a great idea, boom, I start up, get valuation, and then, go, right? But here Steve Jobs talks about the important, not only about the idea, but the whole process and how do you get there? And I want to leave with this, and then I'll head with a summary slide for all of you to look at.
One of the things that really hurt Apple was after I left, John Sculley got a very serious disease. And that disease, I've seen other people get it too. It's the disease of thinking that a really great idea is 90% of the work. And that if you just tell all these other people, here's this great idea, then of course they can go off and make it happen. And the problem with that is that there's just a tremendous amount of craftsmanship in between a great idea and a great product. And as you evolve that great idea, it changes and grows. It never comes out like it starts because you learn a lot more as you get into the subtleties of it. And you also find there's tremendous trade-offs that you have to make. I mean, there are just certain things you can't make electrons do. There are certain things you can't make plastic do or glass do. And as you get into, or factories do, or robots do. And as you get into all these things, designing a product is keeping 5,000 things in your brain, these concepts, and fitting them all together in kind of continuing to push to fit them together in new and different ways to get what you want. And every day you discover something new that is a new problem or a new opportunity to fit these things together a little differently. And it's that process that is the magic. And so we had a lot of great ideas when we started, but what I've always felt that a team of people doing something they really believe in is like when I was a young kid, there was a widowed man that lived up the street, and he was in his 80s. He's a little scary looking, and I got to know him a little bit. I think he might have paid me to mow his lawn or something. And one day he said, "Come on into my garage, I want to show you something." And he pulled out this dusty old rock tumbler. It was a motor and a coffee can and a little band between them. And he said, "Come on with me." We went out to the back and we got some rocks, some regular old ugly rocks. And we put them in the can with a little bit of liquid and a little bit of grit powder. And we closed the can up and he turned this motor on. He said, "Come back tomorrow." And his can was making a racket as the stones went around. And I came back the next day and we opened the can and we took out these amazingly beautiful polished rocks. The same common stones that had gone in through rubbing against each other like this, creating a little bit of friction, creating a little bit of noise, had come out these beautiful polished rocks. And that's always been, in my mind, my metaphor for a team working really hard on something they're passionate about, is that it's through the team, through that group of incredibly talented people, bumping up against each other, having arguments, having fights sometimes, making some noise, and working together, they polish each other. And they polish the ideas, and what comes out are these really beautiful stones.
Yeah. So with that, I wanted to thank and I wanted to share the quick summary. Spark, think about where it all got started. The need, understand the need, observe, experience, and look around for opportunities and problems to solve and make an impact. And finally, learn the process, learn and apply the ideation process, brainstorming, mind mapping, SCAMPER, design thinking, and JTBD. But finally, it's not just idea, as you heard, it's about the passion that you have, it's the team that you have, and the finalization of this idea coming through so much process, debate, and agreement, disagreement, and polishing this idea and get to the final shape, and which can impact more people's life. That is what is going to be really the whole process of getting there is what going to be enjoyable for all of you. So I wish you all success, and I wish you all go through this kind of process where you have bright ideas, polish them, get them, start companies, and definitely make an impact. Making money, it will happen automatically, but making an impact in other people's life with your product, that is going to be the fulfilling things to all of you. So I wish you all the best for that.
Thank you, sir. It was a really great presentation and there was a lot to learn from it. So I think we should open for a Q&A session right now. We will keep it open for like next 5 to 10 minutes. And after that, we'll conclude this session. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We have a window for next 10 minutes. So let's do it quickly.
No question. Since was I audible or?
Yeah.
Either they got everything or did not.
Here we go. We have the first question, sir. Of course, you are. This proves that you are audible. So we have. Can I really convert my idea into reality by Balbir Yadav?
Yes, sure. Balbir, I don't know why you're asking this question, because if you think about it, every product you see is somewhere manifested in someone's mind as an idea, and that's how it came into reality. Now, as you heard Steve Jobs saying, the ideas that you originate is not going to directly hit the market, as what you imagine, right? There was something which I was reading when I was researching for it, right? Look at Starbucks, right? How, it's a coffee. It's basically a coffee. How, before Starbucks started, coffee existed. People drank coffee, everything happened, right? So now, what is that, uniqueness is about, converting that idea into reality. Is about going through the process of what is needed. So Starbucks is not a coffee company. If you look at it, it's an experience company. They, when you go into a store, how do you experience? How do you get treated? How is the drink made to you? That is all they look at essentially, right? So definitely your idea can be, translated to reality, but then it's not just, tonight I got an idea, tomorrow it's going to be reality. Probably not. You need to go through, understand the market, you need to understand what is the customer need. And based on that, your idea will take some form on shape and then get into reality. So definitely it can, like I said, every product you see is somewhere, in someone's mind as an idea, and it got into market right now.
So we have the next question from Naman Agarwal, and he's asking, what are the things that we should check before finalizing our idea?
I'll go back to the Mark Zuckerberg thing, right? There's nothing finalizing idea, basically. You either get an idea. Obviously, I talked about some of these techniques that I said, essentially, how do you go about validating your idea, right? And you need to make sure that, you have eliminated. One of the major things you can do as part of the brainstorming or mind mapping is challenging your assumptions. Let's say two of you, maybe you got an idea, you pull in your friend or, students you're studying with you, you can say, hey, I have this idea, challenge me, ask me question, play as a devil's advocate, and then see whether your idea still holds, essentially, right? Because that is what will make sure that, how your idea is withstanding all this question. Because if one person is asking this question, think about the customers that's going to ask question. The other important thing is you have to go to the field. Today, you cannot just sit in front of a computer or say, I have an idea, I'm going to develop a product. No. Who's your customer? You need to go and talk to them. You need to observe them. You need to interview them. You need to be out there in the field in order to understand how your idea can get finalized, right? So that is what I called about the ideation process. You either pick one of that in order to fine tune or polish your ideas in order to get to the final shape.
Yeah, sir. So coming to we have a bunch of questions coming in right now. So
Sure.
I guess, merge a few questions together just to save time.
Sure.
So one question is, when shall we stop ideation and start doing as Mr. Zuckerberg said? And, he's also complimenting that he liked your design thinking slide, and thanks you for the wonderful presentation. Also, the second question is, how to get an idea. We can just sit don't we just sit and think of ideas even if we come across a situation? How to know that this situation will give me an idea?
Great questions. Thank you, folks. Basically, see, if you have to say when will we stop an ideation, I would say never. You never stop ideation, and you can go and look at what Mark Zuckerberg starts, right? If you look at it the way how Facebook is, every day they are building and releasing products. They're making enhancement and features. The idea never stops if you look at it, right? Because there is never a stop movement saying that, okay, I'm done. This is it, right? What you do is basically your idea is in a certain form. Now you can take it, experiment, and come back to the origin. Okay, this idea, I thought about it. Is it applying the same way what I thought about, or do I need to make some changes? So to me, in my perspective, there is no stop for ideation stage. That's why you look at it, in the design thinking, or when I talked about the agile process, it's about you look at what you have, you prototype, you test it out, you come back to the ideation stage again, because that is the feedback funnel for you to fine tune your idea. So in that aspect, definitely I wouldn't say there is no stop for ideation. There is a temporary way where you say, okay, this idea is mature enough for me to take it and test it and come back and validate it. So that is one thing. Then, you talked about how do you, how to get an idea. Well, that's very, very easy, right? You go sit in any place, you look at what's happening, you look at what are the problems happening, and you can quickly get some thoughts. And one good thing is essentially what I would suggest is note down your ideas. Check it, don't go for fancy, laptop or, tablet or anything. Just take a paper, notebook, a small notebook, keep in your pocket, just starting out, ideas, right? That's the best way to do. And don't discard anything, right? Because all great ideas starts with something somewhere. Now, your original idea could be something, but then you will go somewhere, right? It's always good to have that. So inspirations all around, right? Like I said, you can look at any product out there in the market in the world. Now you can say, what, hey, that's a great idea that they've done. How can I do it here? And people say that, hey, it's just a copy paste. Yes, it is a copy paste, but then like I told you, how do you contextualize? Who is your audience? Who's your customers? How do I understand them better? And what do they want to do? And how can I make my product better, right? So that is where your ideation happens essentially, right? What can I do? And it's all over the place, I would say. There is no specific place where you get an idea. It's all around you if you look around and observe.
Okay, one recurring question we are getting is how to build an idea. And the other questions are basically, is a single idea enough to be enough for a startup, or we have to start ideating on a bunch of different things? So I guess these two questions are to be addressed. Yeah.
I understand the last question, which is basically only single idea is needed. What is the first question, Arjun?
How to build a team.
How to build a team. Now, I'll address the first question. I'll go to the second question. Don't think it as an idea that is essentially which is always be stagnant when you build a startup or things, right? Like I said, for a product to come out, it takes iterations, in terms of how an idea get evolved essentially. So for you to look at essentially, how do I, is a single idea enough? I need more ideas. What is the central core theme? What is that you're trying to solve? In the same J2BD example, what do you think this idea will help whoever you are selling this to your customer, in a healthcare sector or e-commerce, whatever area you pick up, what is the central core theme that you want to address? Now, once you pick that up, essentially, you will know what is my one single thing I want to experiment with. So that is why, we call about, MVP, right? What is the, immediate thing that you can, develop and put out in the market and test. And based on that, you'll get the feedback, right? And then you can, that will give you more ideas. So there is never going to be a single idea that is saying that, okay, this is a startup. That's what I will do, right? Now you can look around all the examples, you have, right? Where even I'll talk about Flipkart. Flipkart started as only selling books. Now, if you look at it now, where they've grown in the 10-year, 11-year journey, it's not only book, it's everything under the sky that they are selling. But then if you can look at it, they've also branched into several other fintech products, advertisement products, everything goes. But if you look at the original idea, it started from somewhere starting a book, but then they went ahead, experimented it, made it well, then started adding categories, then started innovating, right? So there is never a single idea for a startup. It's always going to be, iterative. It's always going to be market validation, and then improving based on that. Now, coming to the second question, how to build a team. Now, one of the important things, a lot of venture capitalists look at it essentially, not just idea, it's about the team. Now, when you look at team, how passionate are these other people that you're sharing this idea with? Are they really passionate about the same way you are? And they are connected to the cause? That is how you can identify the teams, right? Otherwise, you have people basically, today technology and people are available. We can just say, I want you to develop this, they will develop. But then you really want something like that, or someone who is really, connected to your ideas, use day in, day out, breathing, thinking the way you are thinking. And the other way is also complementing. You don't want to look at same kind of people like, okay, someone you go with an idea and the other person says, it's a great idea, let's do it. No, you want someone to complement you. You want someone to challenge your ideas. That's what, you heard Steve Jobs saying. It's that friction, is that agreement, is disagreement, the fight that goes on. That is how product gets better, right? And that is why the founding team, the founders are very, very important, right? I can go back to Sachin and Vinny. They are, founders, but then they complement each other very, very well, whereas Vinny is very, very analytical. He looks at things very, very, close, minute, execution, operation. Sachin is a visionary. He looks at, 2-3 years ahead, 5 years ahead, this is what we want to build, right? Now, each of them are complementing each other. So when you are looking at team, you have to look at first, are they connected to your, idea? How passionate are they similar to you? Second is, how are they complementing yours, and how are you complementing them? These are important traits to, in order to build a team.
So we'll take the last question of the session, and this is a quite interesting one. It is basically complementary to the last question. The question is, when it comes to building a team, who do you give more preference? Is it the one who is more loyal to you, or one who is more passionate about the idea?
Wow, that's a tough question. Honestly, I would say I don't know the answer, right? Because today, this is something which I learned, long time back when I went to US to work, and one of my, client who was working, he said, "Hey, never loyal to be an employee to an employer, because employer never thinks like that, right?" Today, obviously, you all know how the market is. People join company, leave company, jump 1 to 2 years and all. So loyalty, I'm not sure, basically, right? It is something which you look at. I would definitely bet more on passion, how passionate that person is to that idea. See, don't think as the person is loyal to me, right? If he's loyal to the idea, then obviously that is great, basically, right? It's that passion and loyalty to that idea is more important than to you or to loyal to you, right? So that is the way I will different. Loyalty is not bad, but loyalty, don't look at loyalty to you, but to the idea and the passion toward the idea. Definitely, I will rank passion a little bit more than loyalty, but then loyalty, I'm kind of twisting it, saying that loyalty not towards you, but towards the idea and to the product and the passion toward the product. That is what will really help you to, build a great team and a great product.
Okay, sir. I think I think this will stop here and conclude this session.
Sure.
So it has been a really great session, sir. And we really understood what actually, how to have an idea, what are the parameters to it, how to think about an idea, and especially what is the impact of having a really good idea. And it need not be really, ambitious idea. Even a small idea can change the world. So I thank you for taking your time out after your busy schedule and coming to this session to enlighten our students and helping them on their journey towards creating a good startup. So yeah, that would be it from my side.
Thank you, Arjun, and thank you all,
Yes.
everyone. Thank you, everyone, and wish you all the best. And looking forward more startups coming from IIT Mumbai and this Technovation initiative. And all the best. I'm available for any help you need. Arjun, ask my details. Happy to mentor you, guide you in all this process. Wish you all good luck. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye. Bye.